Welcome to the deep dive. So today we're looking at something pretty fundamental. It's this idea from your sources about three core containers in the mind.
That's right. Safety, sociality, and curiosity. A really interesting way to frame things.
Exactly. And our goal here is, well, to really get a handle on what they are, how they interact, and maybe why knowing about them could be, I don't know, a bit of a game changer for understanding ourselves, our feelings, actions, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And the sources you sent over, some video bits and book excerpts, they don't just introduce this container model. They also link it back to something from ancient Greece called Thymos.
Thymos, okay. Intriguing. We'll definitely get to that.
Yeah, it adds another layer entirely.
And, you know, as you're listening, maybe you've had that feeling sometimes, like things are generally okay, but something's missing.
That vague sense of unease.
You're just wondering, why do I want the things I want? What's really driving me?
These sources suggest this framework might offer some clues.
So that's the mission today, to dive into those underlying drivers. Okay, so containers. Let's start there. What exactly do we mean by containers?
Well, the key thing is not to think of them as like rigid psychological boxes. It's more of a metaphor. Think of them as these essential inner spaces where our feelings first start bubbling up. They represent core needs.
Got it. So spaces where feelings begin. What's the first one? Safety.
Safety, yeah. The core question there is basically, am I okay here? Am I secure?
And that's physical safety. Emotional.
All of it. Physical, emotional, even economic security is that fundamental need to feel protected, for things to be somewhat predictable.
Right, and the sources say that if this one isn't feeling full,
then everything else gets filtered through that lens. Your decisions become reactions, basically. Less about growth or connection, more about just getting through safely.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Survival mode kicks in. Okay, so after safety, we have sociality, or social connection.
Right, sociality. This is our deep need to connect with others, to be seen, heard, understood.
It's about belonging, essentially.
Exactly, having those meaningful bonds. The sources mention something really striking, that if this container is empty, you can start to feel foreign even to yourself.
Wow, that's profound. Cut off from others, cut off from yourself.
It highlights how vital that connection really is for just feeling whole.
Okay, safety, sociality, and the third one is curiosity. Or meaning and curiosity.
Curiosity, yeah. Think of it as that inner kid always asking why. It's the drive to explore, to learn, figure things out, create, express, basically to understand the world and our place in it. It's tied to finding meaning.
It's about wanting to know, not just having the knowledge.
Spot on. The sources emphasize that. It's the drive, the wanting to explore the unknown that fills this container, not just accumulating facts.
Okay, so three core needs. Safety, sociality, curiosity. But you said they're not separate boxes.
Definitely not. That's really crucial. The sources describe them as interconnected, like rooms with really thin walls, maybe even blurred edges.
So what happens in one affects the others?
Absolutely. A choice you make, or something that happens to you, can send ripples through all three.
Can you give an example? From the sources, maybe?
Sure. One example they used was about, say, a family argument. You might choose to stay quiet to avoid conflict.
Okay, prioritizing the safety container.
Exactly. You feel safer in the moment, but that choice might leave your sociality container feeling a bit empty, right? Because you weren't seen or heard authentically.
Right, you traded connection for safety. Okay, that makes sense. What's another way they interact?
Well, think about that curiosity one. A child, for instance, might stop asking why all the time.
Yeah.
You might assume they just lost interest. But the sources suggest it could actually be about safety. Maybe they learned asking questions leads to criticism or makes someone angry.
So they shut down their curiosity to protect their feeling of safety.
Precisely. So what looks like an empty curiosity container is actually a crack in the safety one manifesting elsewhere.
Yes. Wow. Okay, so the symptom isn't always where the problem lies, like the warning light on the dashboard.
Exactly that analogy. The emptiest looking container isn't necessarily the one that's fundamentally compromised. You have to look at how they're influencing each other.
So, understanding this, it's not about diagnosing yourself then. What's the point?
The point isn't really to label or fix anything, no. It's more about awareness, giving you a kind of map.
A map?
Yeah, a map to understand your own patterns, to see where certain feelings might be coming from, what underlying need might be unmet.
Okay, less diagnosis, more. Self-understanding tool. That feels better. And the sources also mentioned something about emptiness and fulfillment.
Right, that what we label as just general emptiness might actually be a specific container we've tuned out, a need we're not listening to anymore.
Like ignoring the low fuel light for too long.
Kind of, and conversely, sometimes what we think is fulfillment, what we're chasing, might be based on what others expect, not what actually fills our containers.
So we might be trying to fill the sociality gap with, I don't know, more work achievements or something.
Exactly, a mismatch, trying to put the wrong kind of fuel in the wrong container.
Where did this whole idea come from anyway? Is it from like formal psychology studies?
Interestingly, no, not directly. The sources suggest it emerged more from observing patterns in oneself, in others. Less textbook, more lived experience.
That actually makes it feel more relatable somehow.
Yeah, it connects to those really basic human questions, doesn't it? Who am I? Why do I sometimes feel like something's just off?
That sense of an unnamed absence.
And this framework, these containers, they're offered as tools for that exploration. Not answers, necessarily, but, like you said, a map. Maybe a compass, too.
A map and compass for navigating yourself. I like that. Because we're not static, are we? We change.
Exactly. The self is always evolving, so the aim isn't a final definition, but helping you see where you are, maybe where you're heading, even when things feel uncertain.
And that emptiness we feel sometimes. Maybe it's not about being empty, but maybe filled with the wrong things.
That's a great way to put it. It prompts you to look inside those containers, see what's actually in there versus what you need in there.
And the sources said something about how the best insights aren't just learned, they're recognized.
Yeah, that they awaken something already within you, those aha moments, rather than just absorbing information.
Okay, this is all making sense. Now, you mentioned Thymos earlier.
Yeah.
This ancient Greek idea. How does that fit in?
Right, Thymos. So in ancient Greece, it was this concept linked to the chest, the diaphragm area.
Okay.
And it represented our spiritedness. Things like courage, anger, desire, but also a sense of what's right, our sense of justice.
So more than just raw emotion. It has a moral component.
Kind of, yeah. The sources frame it as the engine of our inner justice system. It's the energy that flares up when we feel something is unfair or when we believe we deserve something good or bad. It's like an internal alarm for fairness.
An inner fairness alarm.
Okay.
How does that connect to the safety, sociality, and curiosity containers?
It connects really directly. Think of Thymos as reacting to the state of those containers. When a container is full and your needs are met, Thymos might feel settled. But when a container is empty or threatened,
The alarm goes off.
exactly, Thymos ignites. It signals that a core need, something you feel is fundamentally due to you, isn't being met.
Can you give examples like what would Thymos say for each container?
Okay, so if your social container is empty, you feel excluded, ignored,
Yeah.
Thymos might flare up as that feeling of, this isn't right, I should belong. Maybe it comes out as loneliness, resentment, or a strong push to connect.
Okay, what about safety?
If your safety container is fractured, maybe through instability, betrayal, feeling physically unsafe, Thymos might respond with fear, anxiety, or maybe anger. That protective, how dare you,
Right.
a defense mechanism.
And curiosity. If that drive to learn, explore, and find meaning is stifled maybe by circumstance or fear or just neglect.
Thymos might signal that there's boredom, restlessness, frustration, or this deep sense of something important is missing here, a kind of inner disappointment.
So Thymos isn't just the feeling of anger or sadness, it's the underlying energy pushing for justice, for things to be put right according to our needs.
That's a great summary. It's the drive to fill the void, to restore what feels fair or necessary for that container. It seeks to rebalance things internally.
So paying attention to our containers, that helps us hear the voice of Thymos more clearly. Understand what that alarm is really about.
Precisely. Instead of just feeling angry or sad or restless, you start to see why. You connect it back to an unmet need in safety, sociality, or curiosity.
Which could lead to more constructive responses maybe, rather than just lashing out.
That's the idea presented in the sources, yes. Understanding the root cause, the container involved, helps you guide that thymic energy. It can become less about raw anger and more about inner justice speaking, as one source put it. Maybe even driving positive action.
Wow. Okay, this ties it all together really nicely. The containers give us the what, and Thymos is like the why behind our strong reactions.
A really potent combination for self-understanding.
Definitely. Okay, so wrapping this up, the big takeaway here seems to be that we've got this new lens, this framework of the three containers: safety, sociality, curiosity.
Yeah, a way to understand those fundamental needs that are constantly influencing our feelings, our choices, our behavior, whether we realize it or not.
And for you listening, hopefully this deep dive gave you a bit of a shortcut, maybe spark some of those aha moments about your own patterns without getting bogged down in jargon.
Just a map, really. Something to help navigate your own inner world.
So on that note, here's a final thought for you to mull over, inspired by one of the video clips. Which of your containers feels a bit silent right now? Which one might you have been ignoring? And maybe for how long?
Something to consider.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.